Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting right into the DNA of the web,
Yep.
HTML.
The very building blocks.
Exactly. And our goal, our mission, if you will, is to equip you with a really solid grasp of the essential HTML best practices, the standards for structuring web pages properly.
Right. Understanding that blueprint.
It's fundamental stuff.
It really is. And for this exploration, we've pulled together a pretty interesting mix of resources.
Oh, yeah. What do we got?
Well, first up, there's an HTML best practices guide from IBM. It's actually from 2013, but surprisingly, a lot of the core ideas are still super relevant.
Okay, a bit dated, but maybe some timeless principles.
Exactly. Then we've got insights from a Reddit discussion, real front-end developers talking about their current standards, how they actually work day to day.
Ah, so the practical side. Nice.
Yeah, boots on the ground stuff. And rounding it out, we're digging into the W3C's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the WCAG 1.0 specifically, from way back in 1999.
Wow, 1999, that's foundational.
It absolutely is. Plus some related W3C info to tie it together.
Okay, so we've got formal guidelines, real-world developer chat, and the crucial accessibility angle. Sounds like a good mix. Where do we start?
Let's start right at the beginning. The very, very first line a browser sees.
Makes sense. What is it?
The IBM guide is really clear on this one. Every modern HTML document must start with the dopey typey HTML5 declaration.
Dopey typey HTML5. Okay, simple enough.
Well, simpler than the old ones, definitely. It basically just tells the browser, hey, use the latest HTML standards for this page. Gets everyone on the same page, rendering-wise.
Gotcha. Signal the standard right away.
Yeah.
What else is critical right at the top? The guide mentioned character encoding.
Absolutely vital, yeah. The guide stresses using the UTF-8 character set declaration. That's meta charset UTF-8.
Okay, meta charset UTF.
And crucially, they say put it as the very first thing inside the head tag.
First thing, why so specific?
Apparently, it helps the browser figure out how to read the text immediately, like no guesswork, which can actually speed up loading and rendering just a tiny bit.
Huh. Okay, faster loading is always good. So after the doc type, we have the basic HTML head body structure we all know. Is there a preferred order inside the head?
There is, yeah. The basic template they show is sort of like DDoC type EE, HTML, HTML, then often style or links to CSS, then maybe script tags, head body TML.
So styles before scripts in the head.
Generally, yes. Link your CSS style sheets before you include script tags. The thinking is you want the browser to know how things look before scripts start messing with them. Helps avoid that flash of unstyled content,
Yeah, that flicker. Yeah, makes sense. Get the paint on the wall before you hang the pictures.
Exactly. Good analogy.
Now, the IBM guide had a note about HTML templates or fragments, little bits of HTML.
Right. That's a handy tip if you're working with, say, components or stuff you inject into a page later. For those snippets, the guide says don't include the full doc type, HTML head, or body tags.
So leave all that out.
Yeah. Just wrap the whole fragment in a single top-level div, keeps it neat, self-contained, avoids messing up the main page structure when you slot it in.
Got it. Keep the fragments clean, just wrap them in a div. Okay, back inside the head. Besides the chart set, what else do the sources say is essential?
The IBM guide mentioned a couple more things, though the bits we have aren't super detailed. One was using the latest IE rendering engine when needed.
Uh-oh, IE. Is that still relevant?
Less so now, thankfully.
Yeah.
But back in 2013, you'd use a specific meta tag, meta HTTP equiv XUA compatible content, i.e. Edge, to force Internet Explorer to use its best rendering mode. It was a big deal then.
Okay, a historical artifact mostly. What else?
The other big one is setting the viewport. Always set the viewport to the device's width and height.
Ah, the responsive design thing. Meta name viewport.
Exactly that one. Typically, meta name viewport content with device width, initial scale 1.0. Still absolutely essential. Tells mobile browsers how to size and scale the page properly right from the start.
Right, the key to making sites work on phones. Okay, let's drill down into the tags themselves. Syntax stuff. Any big do's and don'ts?
Oh yeah, several key points from the IBM guide. First, they say don't bother putting the type attribute on script and style tags anymore.
Really? I thought you needed type text JavaScript.
Not in HTML5.
Yeah.
Browsers just assume script is JavaScript and style is CSS. So adding the type is just, well, extra typing. Redundant.
Code. I like it. What else?
Always use the link tag for external style sheets. That's the standard way link rel style sheet are.
Okay, standard practice. What about self-closing tags, like div?
Big no-no, according to the guide. At least for elements like div or script that can have content. They call them invalid null tags. Always use the full closing tag. Divide whatever, not divide whatever.
Why is that so bad?
It can apparently mess up how the browser understands the page structure, the DOM. It can lead to weird parsing bugs.
Right.
So always close your tags properly.
Right. Keep the structure clear. Anything else on tag usage?
They also advise against using script tags to load AMD-based modules. The guide didn't really explain why in the excerpt we saw.
Maybe outdated advice now with newer JavaScript modules.
Probably. ES modules are more the standard these days. I guess that's the reason.
Okay. And what about just like how we write the tags? Uppercase, lowercase, quotes. Does any of that matter?
Consistency is key, the guide says. They strongly recommend using lowercase for all element names like div, p, span, and all attribute names like id, class, href.
Lowercase everything. Easier to read.
Much easier, yeah, especially in Teams. And for attribute values, unless it's a Boolean attribute, they recommend always using double quotes.
Double quotes. So a hrefpage.html, not a hrefpage.html.
Oh, definitely not a hrefpage.html.
Okay.
Double quotes avoid confusion, especially the value itself has a single quote in it, Just keeps things uniform.
Okay. Lowercase tags and attributes. Double quotes for values. Got it. What about those Boolean attributes you mentioned, like required on a form field or checked?
Ah, good question. This trips people up sometimes. The IBM guide is clear. For Boolean attributes, don't provide a value. Just the attribute name itself is enough.
So just input required, not input required true.
Exactly, just input required. The presence of the attribute implies true. Funnily enough, even if you write input required false, the browser still sees the required attribute as being present, so the field is still required.
Whoa, really? That's counterintuitive.
It is, so just remember, Boolean attributes, just the name, input disabled, video autoplay, details open, no value needed.
Okay, that's a really important detail. Learn something there. Now let's shift focus a bit. Making HTML not just work, but like mean something. Semantic HTML.
Yes, this came up strongly in both the IBM guide and the Reddit discussion. It's a huge deal.
So instead of just divs and spans everywhere.
Right, you should use tags that actually describe the content. Header, nav, main, article, aside, footer. These tags have inherent meaning.
Why is that better? I mean, you can just use classes on divs, right? Div class header.
You can, but you lose major benefits. One Reddit user, Gimslack12, pointed out that using semantic tags can often mean writing less CSS. Browsers sometimes have default assumptions about them.
Okay, potentially less code. What else?
The biggest win is accessibility. Screen readers and other assistive tech rely heavily on these semantic tags to understand the page structure. A nav tells them this is navigation. A main says, here's the main content. It makes the page make sense to someone who can't see the visual layout.
Oh, okay. So it's not just for developers. It's critical for users with disabilities.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And as another Redditor, Violet Beast, mentioned, it's also good for SEO. Search engines can better understand your content hierarchy, too. It gives meaning machines can parse.
For machines, clarity for humans. Makes sense. Now, HTML5 didn't just add semantic tags, right? It added built-in features we used to need JavaScript for.
Totally. The IBM guide lists a bunch.
Yeah.
Autofocus for putting the cursor in a field automatically, placeholder text inside inputs, the hidden attribute, draggable, required for basic form validation.
Stuff we use libraries for.
Exactly. And new input types like email, URL, tel, date, search. These give you built-in browser features like basic validation on an email field or a date picker.
So the advice is use the built-in HTML5 stuff first.
Definitely. Leverage the platform. And if you do need to support really old browsers that don't get these features, the guide mentions using shims. These are little bits of JavaScript that basically polyfill the missing feature, making the new stuff work even in older environments.
Shims, like little compatibility patches.
Got it. Okay, so HTML5 added good stuff. What about old stuff we should stop using?
Oh, yeah. The guide is very clear. Avoid deprecated HTML4 elements. Things like the font tag for setting fonts and colors, or the center tag.
Right, presentation stuff.
Exactly. All presentation, all styling should be handled by CSS now. Keep your HTML clean and focused on structure and meaning. The guide even suggests checking lists of obsolete tags to make sure you're not using any zombie elements.
Use CSS for styling, HTML for structure.
Got it. Okay, let's talk about the EID attribute. Seems simple. Unique identifier. Any catches?
The biggest one, stressed by the IBM guide. Never have duplicate IDs on the same page. Ever.
Why not? What happens?
IDs are meant to be absolutely unique. If you have duplicates, things like JavaScript, get element by I, break or behave unpredictably. CSS targeting using IDs can get messed up. It causes chaos, especially in dynamic apps where content changes.
Okay, uniqueness is paramount.
So much so that the guide actually suggests maybe try not using IDs if you could avoid it. Maybe use classes instead. Classes are reusable, IDs aren't.
Lean towards classes over IDs generally.
Kinda, yeah. But there are important exceptions where IDs are necessary.
Like what?
The big one is form labels. The label tag needs a for attribute that points directly to the id of the input it's labeling. That forward link is crucial for accessibility. Clicking the label focuses the input. Screen readers announce the connection.
Ah, right. Label for name.label input ID name, that connection.
Exactly. Super important. The guide also mentions specific cases in like widget templates or the Dojo framework where using IDs in a controlled way makes sense. But for general page structure, be cautious with IDs.
Okay, use IDs sparingly, be unique, but definitely use them for labels. Good advice. This ties right into accessibility, A11Y.
It really does. Accessibility considerations run through so many of these best practices. The IBM guide actually has a little accessibility checklist.
Oh, handy. What's on it?
Let's see. Always validate your HTML errors can break assistive tech. Use A11Y tools yourself, like try using a screen reader. Use the right tags for the job button for buttons, A for links, especially if they have event handlers.
Makes sense. Use the semantically correct element.
Right. And always use label tags for your form inputs properly linked with for and id. And the big one again, use CSS for layout, not tables.
There it is again. No tables for layout. Why is that so bad for accessibility?
Well, think about how a screen reader navigates a table. It usually goes cell by cell, maybe row by row. If you've used a table to just, like, put your navigation on the left and content on the right,
Yeah.
that linear reading order makes absolutely no sense. It's just confusing gibberish for the user trying to understand the page structure. Tables are meant for actual tabular data, rows, and columns of related information.
Okay, so tables for data, CSS, like Flexbox or Grid, for layout, clear separation.
Exactly. And this aligns perfectly with the big principles in WSEC 1.0, those web content accessibility guidelines from the W3C.
Right, the 1999 document. What are the core ideas there? It sounds pretty comprehensive.
It is, but the principles are logical.
Yeah.
A huge one is providing text equivalents for all non-text content. So alt text for images, transcripts for audio, descriptions for video. If you can't see or hear it, you need a text alternative.
Okay, alt text is key. What else?
Don't rely only on color to convey information. Think color blindness. Use proper markup and style sheet semantic HTML again. Clearly identify the language of the content, lang attribute, so screen readers pronounce things right.
Makes sense. Proper structure and language cues.
And making sure things transform gracefully. That means your page should still be usable or provide an alternative if someone doesn't have JavaScript or CSS or newer technologies enabled.
Designed for resilience.
Kind of, yeah. And user control is big. Avoid blinking or auto-moving content that users can't stop. That can be distracting or even harmful for some people. Designed for device independence, meaning it should work with keyboard only, not just a mouse. Use W3C technologies where possible. Provide context, clear navigation, make documents clear and simple. It's a lot, but it boils down to being inclusive.
Inclusive design, okay. And WCAG has those levels, right? A, AA, AAA.
Yep, conformance levels. Level A is the absolute baseline, satisfying all priority 1 checkpoints. These are the must-haves. Without them, some groups just can't access the content.
Priority 1 is essential.
Right. Level AA includes all priority 1 and priority 2 checkpoints. This is a much more robust level of accessibility, and it's often the target standard for websites legally or policy-wise. Priority 2 removes significant barriers.
So AA is a common goal.
Very common. And then level AAA includes all priority 1, 2, and 3 checkpoints. That's the highest level, making content accessible to the widest possible range of people, addressing even more nuanced barriers.
Right.
Aiming for AA is generally a solid target.
A is minimum, A is the goal, AAA is the gold standard.
Got it. Now, that Reddit discussion, it raised a point about standards versus like how devs actually work. Is there one single right way, or is it more flexible?
That's a great point. And yeah, the Reddit thread reflected that reality. While the end result visually might look the same, even with different code, there are generally agreed upon best practices in HTML, probably more so than in, say, CSS, where styles can vary wildly.
So HTML has more consensus. I'd say so. Like that user Gimslack 12 really hammered home semantic HTML. That's pretty universally seen as the ideal way to structure content for those accessibility and CSS benefits we talked about.
Right. But teams might have their own specific coding styles on top of that.
Exactly. You might have company style guides. Another user, Tough Pupil, mentioned CSS methodologies like BEM or SMS, CSS for organizing styles. Those often work best when you start with well-structured